Welcome along everybody to episode 2 of Tutor Talk. This is a series of videos that we're going to be putting out with some information for students. Today's video is going to be all about tutorials, and today I am joined by my wonderful colleague Dave.
Hi everybody.
Do you want to introduce yourself, Dave? Tell us a bit about you.
Okay, so my name is Dave Johnson. I'm a somewhat unsurprisingly a qualified actuary. I've been working for ActEd since the very beginning of the first lockdown. That was for my sins. I ended up taking this job at the very moment when the world shut down.
Great timing.
Perfect timing. Yeah. So there's one thing I know about is online tutorials, and we're going to talk about that a bit today. But before that, I've been working in the insurance industry for a very long time. Best part of 20 years, which is still quite scary to say, mostly in life assurance, mostly for Aviva, but also for the likes of Standard Life and LV as well, and Direct Line before that. So I've seen quite a lot of things, done quite a lot of things, but I'm now turning my hand to trying to help the next generation of actuaries instead.
Fantastic. Thanks, Dave. And just a quick reminder, my name's Sarah Byrne and I am also one of the tutors at ActEd and also a qualified actuary and also with a background in life insurance. So lots of parallels there.
Excellent.
So, tutorials, Dave. First of all, then, should we talk about what a tutorial is in case people aren't familiar with the concept? What is it?
So, a tutorial, I think the most important thing, I guess, from our perspective as tutors is that's your main opportunity to talk to us and to interact with us. A tutorial really, I guess, if we were to say it's to do one thing, it's really to get you prepared to take exam questions. That's the most important thing. So obviously a lot of your learning will be at home, but this gives you an opportunity to come do exam questions in a nice, friendly and supportive environment. And to practice what you're likely to find in the exam, what you're likely to see on exam day, which is really, really important. It's also, of course, an opportunity for you to come and bring your questions to us to try and understand things. And it's also, I think, it's probably fair to say, as much as we'd all like to arrive at tutorials fully prepared, it's also an opportunity for us to help you along and teach you the subject matter as well, to get you up to speed with all the things that you need to know.
Yeah, I mean, I find particularly those areas in the course that are a bit trickier, where actually a face-to-face explanation just makes that bit of difference. I think that's particularly where
it can make all the difference, can't it,
yeah,
Sarah? I think,
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Lovely. So we've got a couple of different options for tutorials. Face-to-face, as we've mentioned, and online. So it's probably just worth us talking a little bit about the difference there. First of all, I'll talk about online. So with the online tutorials, we use a piece of software which is called Adobe Connect, and all the students are in their homes or offices or wherever they want to join the tutorials from, and they log in through this software. And the software has all kinds of tools within it for helping us interact with you and you interact with us. So there's lots of chat boxes, there's lots of polls, lots of questions, and we really try and get you involved as much as possible in those tutorials. It's worth saying the online tutorials are recorded. So if you do miss something, if you can't remember how something was explained, you want to look back over it, you always have the recording. So I'd say that's the sort of basics of the online tutorial. Face-to-face, hopefully the name says it all. It's face-to-face. It's a group of students in a room with a tutor, all kind of in person. And we have those in quite a few different locations. Dave and I, rather conveniently, are based in different parts of the UK, and so we cover different areas, which is handy for this. So I'm based down south, so I tend to teach in London. We have quite a few different venues in London. And we've got one new exciting venue this sitting, which is our new head office on Port Soken Street, which is near Tower Gateway. And I was there today, and some students will be having tutorials there this sitting, which is really exciting. Dave, where do you teach? Where do you spend most of your time?
So I teach, well, certainly I most prefer to teach to the locations that are nearest to me. So I'm based in York, so nearest one to me would be Leeds, for example. That's somewhere I've taught an awful lot. But also on top of that, we have centres in Glasgow and Edinburgh that you can have tutorials at. Manchester, Liverpool, Birmingham. These are all places where I think cover a reasonable spread of the north of England and Scotland as well, so people can get to them and spend a day with us.
Yeah, Bristol as well. Bristol.
Yeah. And we mustn't forget Dublin as well, of course, which is another key centre. Yeah, so we will go over and run tutorials for our Irish colleagues over there as well. So that provides an opportunity for everybody to come and have those face-to-face, I think, for those certainly based in the British Isles anyway.
Yeah. It's worth saying you won't find every location available for every subject. We'll talk a bit I'll mention later on about how we kind of try and work out the best places to have tutorials, but we do try our best to cover as much of the country where there's demand as we can. I just guess it's worth just saying that. Okay.
Yeah, and I think also where there is demand, then there tends to be possibility to put on a tutorial, doesn't there, as well?
Absolutely.
It's always worth mentioning as well. I think it's quite important.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a little bit about sort of what they are and where they are. There's more options as well, if that's not enough for you already. You can decide about sort of when you want the tutorials during the exam sitting. And we refer to these as the difference between regular tutorials. So they'd be regular tutorials often every kind of 2 to 3 weeks, I would say. Or block tutorials, which are when you come and see a tutor for like sort of 3 days in a row or 2 days in a row. And there's pros and cons to each, and everybody will find a different way through. Dave, when you were studying, what did you prefer in terms of regular block?
I found what worked for me is when I first started studying and I was doing the technical exams. Yeah. So what would now be the CS series, your CBs, these sorts of subjects. I used to prefer doing the regular tutorials, and the reason why is because there was a lot of material for those subjects, and and I wanted to make sure I was pacing myself properly through those. So I found that the tutorials provided me with a structure for actually doing the bits, covering each of the individual sections. So I would know that I would have a section completed, then I would have a tutorial, and then I would move on to the next section. But what I found was as I got onto the later exams and it became much more about comprehension and about writing, about formulating discussions and arguments and things like that, I found that for those, the block tutorials worked better because it was much more for me then about tying ideas together at the end of the course. And so it was nice to kind of do it intensively at the end rather than regularly all the way through. And
that's really interesting, isn't it? Because what works for one subject that may not work for other subjects for you. So it isn't the case that you have to, once you pick your type, you stick with that forever. It will adapt and change. Same with all the study materials that we'll talk about later as well. Different materials work for different subjects. I think that's really important to recognise that. I kind of did sort of slightly the opposite, I think. I did regular tutorials. I did block tutorials for the early subjects. But partly that wasn't actually my choice. That was partly driven by work demands, particularly over the winter, where I was working on a client which had a really quick valuation period in January. And I wasn't able to go out for tutorials during January, which ruled out most regular tutorials. So I was on to blocks. So sometimes your choices aren't always your preferred option, but you make it work. And, there is an option that will work for everybody. For later subjects, I did regular tutorials, though, to help get me through the material there. So I had the opposite approach. It worked for me. Your approach worked for you. So, yeah. But I think
we think it did, didn't we?
We got through. Yeah, but definitely like that idea of getting through the material with the regular tutorials, I think is really useful. It's worth pointing out as well, we also have half-day tutorials. So if you do online tutorials, there is a half-day option. Obviously, that means rather than, say, 5 days, you have 10 half-days. But that might be an option. Perhaps if you find online, it can be a long day. And if you find that you're losing momentum, it can be good to break it up and just do a half-day instead. So just another option that might work for different people. So, yeah.
I think, what do they call these? These are kind of the positive outcomes of COVID, aren't they?
Yeah, more choice.
The development of half-day online tutorials is a real thing.
I really think it is. I think that's a real positive. So when we've talked about tutorials, a lot of our days are tutorials and are exactly as we described, going through concepts, going through questions. But if students look at the tutorial bulletin, which is where we advertise all our dates, and I'll pop a link to this in below the video, we also mentioned something called preparation days. What are they, Dave?
Yes.
How do they differ?
Preparation days? Preparation days, they're very similar to tutorials. In actual fact, certainly if you're doing those face-to-face, you probably won't feel very differently about them when you come along to them. But they have a different emphasis. So what we're talking about when we're talking about preparation days is more of the exams that are featuring software, or technical software, I guess is probably the way to distinguish them. So for some of the early papers, that'll be our paper B days. So that'll be where you're doing, for instance, calculations in R or Excel. Yeah. And also we have the CP2 modelling course as well, which also is just a preparation day. So the focus is slightly different. Instead of working through all the material, sort of sequentially as you would do in, say, a regular or a block tutorial, what you're going to be looking at here is something which is more about looking at the whole of the course, but then applying it in a certain way. So it is targeting that particular exam. So the focus is rather different. There'll be a lot less time, a lot less back and forth asking questions and doing quick fire questions, and much more time spent practicing, for example, R or Excel, or all those things that you're going to need for those particular exams. So the very important thing, I guess, to remember for the prep day is to bring your laptop with you.
Yeah. I was about to ask, do we need a laptop? Yeah.
Yeah, so you can bring your laptop, of course, with you for any tutorial. You may find that useful because, of course, that is what you're going to be using these days to answer your or to do your exam. But the preparation days are very, very useful for those paper B type exams. So, for instance, for one of the courses I teach, CS2, we spend 5 days covering all of the material for paper A, and you'd be doing handwritten questions or maybe typing them out. But then we have a whole day dedicated to just solving questions using R and learning how to use that R interface. And that's really what a preparation day is all about.
Okay, thank you very much. Just in terms of that, you've mentioned taking laptops along to kind of tutorials. Before anybody embarks on a tutorial, ideally, what should they have done before that tutorial day or the preparation day?
Well, it's definitely worthwhile making sure you are adequately prepared for a tutorial. That's the way to make sure you get the most out of your tutorial days. So as a bare minimum, you want to have been through the content at least once. And we accept and we understand that sometimes times are going to be busy. You're not always going to be able to be as far through the course as you would like, but it certainly helps if you are at least familiar with what you're going to be looking at, even if you haven't attempted any questions. You'll be in a far stronger position, of course, if you have attempted any questions, particularly past exam questions, that kind of thing, or maybe done the assignments that are associated with that particular section.
Or the end of practice, the end of chapter questions in the notes.
Those sorts of things are going to help you as well. And what you can also then is, if you have found particular parts of the course which are causing you trouble, as well as being able to practice those in the tutorial, you can bring those issues with you. And we can help you with those particular things that are causing you problems. So I always think those things are particularly useful. I think it's quite easy, I think, when you've been around this material for a long time, as we have, to sometimes not necessarily forget, but not quite feel the same way about what's initially going to be difficult for people. What are the stumbling blocks? What are the things that are going to cause them problems? And so if you have something that's really tripped you up, that's really setting you back, you can bring that to a tutor, of course, bring that to a tutorial, and they can help you through that and make sure you understand it. So really important, I think, to prepare for tutorials, even if you haven't had as much time as you maybe would have liked to be totally ready. Yeah,
totally agree. You'll get a lot more out of it if you come prepared than if you don't. Absolutely agree. Yeah.
Certainly.
Good stuff. I mentioned earlier on as well about all the different locations and the fact not every subject is available everywhere. How do we decide where we're going to put tutorials then? So every sitting, at the end of the sitting, we send a questionnaire out to students saying, where would you like tutorials? What are you thinking of doing next sitting? Where would you like to see your tutorial? And we do look at the results of that survey, and based on that we come up with, this is what we think will fit demand next sitting. And we advertise that out to students, and that then becomes the next sitting sort of tutorial bulletin. So if you have a burning desire to have a tutorial in a particular location, please, please, please tell us about it in this questionnaire. I can't promise that you will get everything that you want, but it stands you in much better chance. Particularly if a few people in an area or in a company got together and said, "Oh, we're all doing this next sitting. We'd all like this." You've got a much better chance of getting it advertised. So please do tell us what you're thinking and where you would like tutorials, because we want to put them where you guys need them. So
we do like to meet our students, don't we? As well, we do like to put a face to a name.
Absolutely, absolutely,
and see what you guys are all about.
Yeah, and online as well. Turn your microphone on, say hi to us. We may have cameras coming into use in the next few weeks, who knows, but please turn your microphones on and say hello to us, because it makes our day if a student turns their microphone on. Quite frankly, if someone actually says hello to you, it's lovely. So please say hi. Yeah, it really does. So thank you very much for watching, everybody. Thank you to Dave for joining us today. That's been really useful.
Thank you.
We will pop the email address for any queries or comments in the box below the video. So please do let us know if there's anything you particularly like us to talk about, or let us know what you think of the videos. And just put the subject in the email as Tutor Talk. Thanks very much. We'll see you next time.